today for what is the Climate Disclosure Standards Board's last webinar. My name is Mardi, McBrien, and I am the Managing Director of the CDSB Secretariat, and I'm your moderator for today's CDSB Sunsetting event. Today's online event will deviate from the usual format and everything we've done before. We won't be debating the good, the bad, and the ugly of TCFD, working through detailed guidance and supporting preparers on reporting climate, water, or biodiversity information, or demonstrating how climate can and should be reported using existing accounting standards. Today is about celebrating with you, the community, who have all worked to make CDSB the success it is today, and ultimately achieve our mission, something few not-for-profits or charities are lucky enough to ever realize. I've been privileged to work in the CDSB team for over a decade, and what a rollercoaster ride it has been. The sustainability and ESG reporting landscape has exploded with activity, all seeking to fix or activate a part of the system to drive more transparent, resilient, and sustainable outcomes. CDSB was never the noisiest or flashiest of market interventions. What we were known for, though, and that I am very proud of, is contributing to high-quality technical interventions to fill gaps and advance reporting to the investor audience globally. With the announcement of the establishment of the International Sustainability Standards Board by the IFRS Foundation at the COP26 UN Climate Summit in Glasgow last November, and the convergence of CDSB alongside the Value Reporting Foundation into the IFRS Foundation to give the new board a running start, our mandate of filling a gap in the absence of a globally authoritative body to set global sustainability standards for investors in the mainstream corporate report and accounts was achieved. Which is why we're here today, to reflect on where we have come from and look to the future. And to kick us off, I would like to welcome CDSB's chairman. Although humble, CDSB was Rick's idea. He saw that climate was a foreseeable material risk that would have serious consequences for capital markets long before others, and convened a group at Davos in 2007 to explore how that foreseeable material risk could be addressed. The establishment of CDSB was the outcome, and as they say, the rest is history. Rick, the floor is yours.
Many thanks, Marty, and thanks, colleagues, wherever you may be, for joining our celebration. You know, you talked about reflection, Marty, and I think this is a good moment for that. I find myself coming to the celebration with some of the same sentiments I think a lot of parents have when their adolescent child graduates high school and leaves for university. First, there's this mixture of pride and excitement at the prospect of this great opportunity ahead, with a kind of wistful nostalgia that it's the end of an era and culmination of an incredible transformational journey. And second, there's this feeling I think a lot of us have that this deserves a good party. On the night before her departure to university, my daughter threw a raucous, roof-raising party until 4 a.m. in our basement. Now, this was only 3 days after we moved into a new neighborhood. That's unfortunately how the circumstances under which we met some of our neighbors. And I'm not necessarily suggesting that this is the standard to which we should aspire in this celebration, but I do find myself wishing that we could be doing this in person. And I hope and expect that we'll find a way to have a proper in-person gathering and celebration in the months to come. Let me just say a few words about that transformational journey. I think it's fair to say, pretty widely perceived, that CDSB has been a lean, scrappy outfit, consistently punching above its weight class in a pretty crowded field. It's been relentless in the refinement and expansion of its framework and the production of supporting analysis and practical guidance, all in pursuit of that holy grail of moving mainstream reporting of material, sustainability, and non-financial information, or so-called, from best practice to customary practice. And there's no better example of this relentless organizational productivity than the fact that just this week, our technical working group and the board, following extensive consultation and deliberation, approved an extension of the framework from the E to the S to social issues. And I hope Rodney Owen of WBCSD will say a few words about this, given his leadership within CDSB on this topic. This can be thought of as a final bouquet of content that we're tossing to the markets and to the new ISSB, our very final days. Now, our journey began, as Marty said, in 2007 at the annual meeting in Davos. I did some digging this weekend in preparation for this and came upon the original press release announcing CDSB's formation. It turns out that it was issued 15 years ago today, January 27th, 2007. The day before, I had met with the then global chairs of the Big Four accounting firms to present the concept and obtain their support. I had had some earlier preparatory discussions with their teams, as you would expect, but this is the kind of thing that really needed top level and collective support from the group for it to really fly. There was a bit of discussion about whether this was okay for the firms to do, whether in particular they'd be seen as being self-serving, and me explaining how this risk could be mitigated. And I'll never forget Sam DiPiazza being the first to step unambiguously forward and say, we just have to do this. And the others, to their everlasting collective credit, quickly agreed. We then met the following day with about 20 to 25 industry and investor CEOs and relevant NGO heads to get a critical mass of buy-in. And I look back on this and across the years, and I think that CDSB should be seen as very much in the tradition of how financial accounting standards originated decades ago through private sector and accounting industry and professional association initiative, creating common standards of best practice and then gradually scaling the acceptance and application of them, prepared the ground for them to be embraced formally in one way or another by regulators. And that's what really ultimately scaled us. So I want to recognize and thank all of the major accounting firms and other early supporters and adopters in the private sector and civil society. Particularly want to thank our board members and their institutions, many of whom you'll hear from tonight. This was the next step after Davos in 2007 to convince the most relevant environmental and business organizations to join forces and commit to develop a common framework, building up from the key building blocks, the components in their existing pieces, including, for example, Ceres' framework, CDP's questionnaire, and WRI and WBCSD's GHG protocol. And just thanks in particular, I just want to call out to thanks in particular, Pankaj Bhatia and Janet of WRI, Rodney Owen and Peter Bacher of WBCSD, Mindy Luber and Jim Coburn of Ceres, Dirk Forrester and Henry Derwent of AIDA, Mark Kenber and Mark Pierce of the Climate Group, Amy Holm of the Climate Registry. SASB was a great addition a bit later, Jeff Hales, Janine Guyat, and Steve Gunders. And last but not least, CDP, the host of the Secretariat, Paul Dickinson, Paul Simpson, and Nigel Topping, particularly, were fundamental to the success of this exercise, bringing their management discipline and a real sense of mission alignment to it. They were our funder, it must be said, of last resort during some of those lean years. And I thank all of you board members and your institutions for your commitment. Now, remember that we had one critical, long pivotal meeting, I do recall, hosted by Swiss Re at the initiative of a guy by the name of Rick Murray, at the top of what you Londoners affectionately call the Gherkin. That building was not finished, but for some reason the top floors were, and we were in kind of a room off the boardroom up there. And I recall that discussion because not all of our board members and their institutions were convinced initially, but we did get there. And I want to thank them again, and as well as our funders who spanned government agencies, philanthropies, as well as board organizations, also in some cases kicked in very important resources. Thanks especially also to our technical working group, all the participants over the years, but in particular Gordon Wilson, its chair for many years, and the accounting firms, who all dedicated years of substantial pro bono technical work, and Professional Accounting Association. I want to note Michael Izza's support in particular in this regard. This multifaceted, multi-stakeholder coalition, if you will, this collective effort resulted through the hard work of our team to end up having 500 plus corporate users around the world adopt and apply the framework. But we always saw ourselves as building the wider ecosystem, not owning it all ourselves. So we deliberately sought to enlist and support what you might think of as force multipliers like TCFD. And here I want to thank Mark Carney on behalf of not just CDSB, but basically all of us who've been working in this field. There is simply no single person who has been more of a force multiplier for mainstreaming and scaling of climate and sustainability reporting than him over the past decade. And also shout out to Curtis Ravenel and Mary Shapiro. Just one more further historical anecdote. In the years that followed that 2007 launch, I organized almost every year in Davos a small private meeting of central bank governors and other financial regulators to try to expose them further to the arguments and initiatives happening in this voluntary reporting space. And I recall that Mark and Governor Kuroda of Japan and Jean-Claude Trichet of the ECB were faithful, open-minded attendees of these discussions. And this complemented some of the work that was going on elsewhere in the ecosystem to help CDSB and the wider space move forward. But this does remain a contested space. Let's not kid ourselves. The challenge before the ISSB is considerable. CDSB navigated it well to this point because of a few key attributes, in my opinion, and they're worth reflecting upon it as we sunset. We never forgot that it was first and foremost a technical body, not an advocacy organization. This technical depth and seriousness of purpose was personified and remains personified by Lois Guthrie, who was the first managing director and now TWG, Technical Working Group Chair. Many thanks, Lois, for your incomparable professionalism and devotion over all these years. You set the standard, so to speak, for this aspect of the culture of CDSB, and I hope ISSB will seek to transfer in as well. Secondly, CDSB had a partnership kind of consortium approach in its DNA. We were founded on the notion that the whole was greater than the sum of the parts in the field. And although based in London and Germany, we took a global approach. We invested in consultations around the world, in the Far East and elsewhere. This cooperative, outward-looking global approach is personified by our indomitable managing director, Mardi McBrien. Many thanks to you, Mardi. This is in many ways your accomplishment. We always thirdly kept our eyes on the prize, which is adoption by the official community of financial regulators and accounting authorities. Our framework was patterned after the IFRS standards consciously, well before we knew, we had an inkling that maybe they'd be willing to pick it up someday. We focused on reporting of material matters. We knew that this was ultimately about improving the effectiveness of capital allocation decision-making in the markets through better information and in boardrooms too, through that standardized approach spanning both qualitative and quantitative information. Another way of saying this is that we were consciously seeking all of these years to work ourselves out of business. We found some terrific allies in accelerating the consolidation of the field and moving ourselves closer to that planned obsolescence objective and willingness of regulators and accounting authorities to take up the charge. And I want to thank in particular in this regard, Steve Gunders. He and I started really getting things going in the discussions between CDSB and SASB way before even there was an IFRS exit strategy here. And he and Janine and Charles Tilley have been great partners in plotting this consolidation for the past couple of years. Many thanks to you folks. And then we got this incredible assist by two utterly remarkable people, Veronica Poole and Clara Barbie. The whole field owes these two incredible women a huge debt for their vision, their technical prowess, and their indefatigable drive. Many thanks to both of you as well. So I'm pleased with and want to express appreciation to the ISSB, and in particular, Michel Madeleine and Lee White and their colleagues, including their new colleague, Emmanuel Faber, for agreeing to take on board not only CDSB's IP, but also our fantastic team. And I want to thank all CDSB staff, past and present, for your devotion We know that you had much more lucrative opportunities available to you to apply your professional skill, but you chose to devote a good chunk of your lives to the construction of the financial architecture of the 21st century. I want to thank you personally for your contribution, each and every one of you, past and present. I'm glad to bequeath our people to you, Emmanuel and colleagues at ISSB. But I hope you also take on board these aspects of CDSB's organizational culture and approach that I've just outlined. In my experience, people and culture are the key success factors in an organization, and particularly a new one in a hotly contested space. And so with that, let's continue the celebration. I give you Rodney Owen of WBCSD if he's online right now, as is expected. He's one of the most incisive and wise people I've ever met in this journey. Rodney, over to you, and thanks and congratulations in particular for the social extension of our framework, which you played such an important role in catalyzing. Many thanks.
Rick, we haven't got Rodney yet. He's having some joining difficulties and he will be killing himself that he's just missed that. Absolutely killing himself. But we'll bring him back in a few moments when he gets on. I'm going to jump ahead and introduce our very own founding technical director and chair of our technical working group, Lois Guthrie, who you previously mentioned. Lois is the mastermind that took Rick's vision and corralled the community with us today to write the first CDSB framework for reporting climate-related information in mainstream reports between 2007 and 2010, my apologies. And one way or another has played a leading role in shaping CDSB's reporting legacy ever since. I'm sure you have a story or two to tell, Lois, about CDSB and our impacts. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Mardi, and thank you very much, Rick, for such kind words. This is all quite overwhelming. Never has one been so happy to be obsolete. So thank you. And hello, all CDSB friends. I think it's fair to say that our impact over the years has been way beyond anything we could have imagined in 2007. And since then, it's the dedication of the CDSB team and the many partnerships we've enjoyed, which means that we can look back on an awesome catalogue of impact. We've been training stock exchanges with the Sustainable Stock Exchange Initiative and the IFC, running the TCFD Hub, partnering with the OECD and UN agencies, expanding our remit from climate to forests, biodiversity and social matters, tackling the most arduous technical challenges on accounting, building the reporting exchange with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development and others, and engaging in policy deliberations. So as I reflect on how on earth that was achieved, I see that the success was built on the foundations and the heritage that were gifted to us when CDSB was conceived in 2007. Our board members support their intellectual assets, our home at CDP, the financial support we received first from the UK Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, gave us such stability on which to build. The technical working group, which actually was formed at Rick's very persuasive behest, was on its mission right from the outset very clear: design a compelling, accurate reporting framework and success will follow. The TWG, the acknowledged jewel in CDSB's crown, set to work to do just that. Long hours, often in scruffy cold offices, reading, debating, deliberating over biscuits, veering from desperation to inspiration, running, literally, and in high heels for some of us, between appointments. So we entered new territories at the time. We sat across the table from scientists in order to understand the physics and the measurement of carbon. We circled each other in a dance of unfamiliarity as accountant met astrophysicist. We never lost sight of the fact that companies were at the heart of what we were doing. If they could not or would not adopt our framework and disclose as we were recommending, then the whole mission would fail. We were so fortunate to work with many companies that shared with us their innovations, their dilemmas and their practices, which really lay at the heart of the inspiration for the CDSB framework. So we never gave up to provide a technically rigorous framework, which has now been downloaded many more than 20,000 times. Anyway, although it was the focus of our attention, I wouldn't want you to think that all our energies were solely devoted to climate accounting and disclosure. The story of the CDSB brand portrays the organisation as a pink dot connected by lines to other dots, meaning that we are a small cog in the wheel of wider cultural change, in particular seeking a sustainable pale blue dot, our Earth, that, as Thomas Berry said, is a much more faultless calculator of our economic folly than we are. So thinking like a mountain, as deep ecologist Aldo Leopold recommended, and sometimes dancing, we were what Thomas Friedman called the revolutionary bureaucrats in the back office, using imagination and commitment as the currency of value. While we were helping companies with the construction of climate accounts, we internally were accumulating the most magnificent assets on CDSB's balance sheet, and that asset was goodwill, the collective and forever appreciating goodwill of all those who worked with us, researching, reviewing, editing, organising, communicating, supporting. They are too many to mention here, and if I tried, I think I'd be overwhelmed. But please do read our team's blogs where you're fondly, humbly, and gratefully remembered, all of you who inspired us and contributed to CDSB's success, which you all must share. So today, we look forward to our new chapter. So I won't keep reading from the last chapter. Now we transfer our goodwill to the IFRS Foundation, the parent that we long to adopt us from the stable, happy foster home so kindly provided by CDP. Our bags are packed with loads of ideas, an address book filled with your contact details and enthusiasm for the future. So see you there. Thank you.
Thanks, Lois. Indeed, our bags are packed with goodwill and energy. It is definitely exciting times. You spoke fondly of the jewel in our crown. And due to the limited time we have today, we couldn't give everyone in that crown a speaking slot, as much would have liked to run an open mic session for all of our friends for our farewell event. So we've put together a short video from a few of our friends.
To support the development of this climate change reporting framework. The work of the CDSB was true thought leadership. The threat of climate change was increasingly recognised, but there was no reporting of climate change risk and its financial consequences in mainstream corporate reports. Using the principles of financial reporting, we developed a framework for dealing with material climate matters in mainstream reporting. Why would we do this? As is generally accepted today, but not back then, investors and financial markets needed decision-useful information that aligned climate disclosure with financial reporting cycles.
The importance of what the CDSB has done in terms of driving the climate change reporting agenda forward cannot be underestimated. And as a result, I'm absolutely delighted that you're collaborating and consolidating with the ISSB.
When I first started at CDSB, we were just a team of 4. And when I think back on all of the things that we achieved, it's incredible. And we couldn't have done that without a team of amazing, clever, passionate individuals.
I'm proud of the small role that I played in the story of CDSB in my time at CDP. And I'd like to thank the hundreds, thousands of you who've volunteered and played your role in this amazing story over the years. And I do think it is one of the greatest stories of effective civil society mobilisation, from a kind of mad idea through years of deep expertise and patient, relentless hard work to finally handing over to a powerful global regulatory mechanism.
I'm incredibly proud of the achievements that CDSB has made, the thought leadership that we've contributed to, and it's been such a great pleasure and privilege to have worked alongside such a brilliant and diverse set of people.
I took on the mantle at CDSB for a year from June 2015. What a year to do it. On my second day in the role, we launched the truly groundbreaking CDSB framework. A few months later, I was in Paris at COP21, representing this amazing organisation responsible for so much of the heavy lifting, driving effective reporting and disclosure of climate change information.
When I found the report, Uncharted Waters, issued in 2017 by CDSB, I thought, this is what we are looking for, and jumped in the CDSB's technical working group.
One of my fondest memories of CDSB is the TCFD workshop that we ran at UNCTAD ISAR in 2019. And this for me is one of the many examples of CDSB's innovative and creative contribution to driving real progress with sustainability reporting.
My memory of CDSB is of being in Sydney, Australia to do the Southern Hemisphere launch of the alignment project, which brought all the international voluntary sustainability frameworks together and which has ultimately led to today. And because it was coordinated with an event in London for the Northern Hemisphere, Mardi, who has been such an inspirational leader of the CDSB, with myself, we're doing that at the World Congress of Accountants in Sydney in the early hours of the morning. And we did it because that event was of global significance.
I first joined the CDSB Technical Working Group in its very beginning. I still have fond memories of flying to London from Tokyo and joining discussion in the very cozy meeting room in Clerkenwell. I was always inspired by the members' knowledge, thought, and more than anything, the vision for the future corporate reporting and how climate change issues need to be embedded in the mainstream annual reporting.
Kudos to CDSB team for developing an excellent prototype, building on leading standards such as the GHG protocol. I think this merger will provide a strong foundation and a drive that was the hallmark of CDSB to establish a credible global corporate sustainability standard in no time.
The legacy of CDSB, quite simply, it has been the leading force in the world that has persuaded the world that sustainability is a financial reporting issue. Thank you for everything you've done.
What a super video, and surprising to you all, I'm sure it does actually leave me lost for words. So let's continue with the video theme. We have two very special friends that have played a role in CDSB success would like to say a few words.
On behalf of the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, I'd like to express how grateful we are for the steadfast support of the CDSB over the many years we've worked together. The task force first looked to and drew from the great work of CDSB as we were developing the TCFD recommendations. Over the following years, through its stewardship of the TCFD Knowledge Hub, helping companies with implementation through hundreds of trainings and workshops, developing guidance, and tireless dedication to improving climate-related disclosure, the CDSB has played an integral role in driving TCFD adoption around the world. Because of your work, we can proudly say that the TCFD has more than 3,000 supporters worldwide, and 9 jurisdictions have announced plans for reporting requirements based on the TCFD framework. Further, international organizations and standard setters like the G7, the G20, IOSCO, the IFRS Foundation, EFRAG, and many others are using the TCFD framework to bring consistency across global sustainability reporting standards. For those of you who have been with us since the beginning, I do not think it's an overstatement to say that we never dreamed of this level of adoption of the TCFD recommendations, and your contributions have made a real impact. We could not have done this without you. I wish you the best of luck as you begin a new chapter with the ISSB. representing the next step in bringing cohesion and clarity to reporting standards worldwide and our shared fight against climate change. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou katoa. I'm James Shaw and I'm the Climate Change Minister here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I just wanted to take a minute to congratulate everyone at the Climate Disclosure Standards Board on its merger into the International Sustainability Standards Board. The merger is a welcome sign that CDSB has achieved what it set out to do, developing a single set of high-quality international standards for sustainability and climate reporting. That work stands as a vital part of global efforts to improve comparability, strengthen accountability, and help investors to identify climate-related risks and opportunities. So well done. I want to particularly acknowledge the work that CDSB has done in New Zealand over the course of the last few years. The guidance and the insights that CDSB has provided in that time helped us to become the first country in the world to introduce mandatory climate change disclosures last year. I've also enjoyed participating in a number of CDSB organised events, most recently, of course, at COP26 in Glasgow. So again, congratulations on a job well done and on your new home at the ISSB. And of course, my very best wishes for the future. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
I'd now like to invite Rodney Owen, previously introduced by our chairman, Richard Samans, to the stage. Now, Rodney, not only have you challenged us, but you've also played a key role in supporting the team's success in more ways than I could ever wish from a board member. You've done everything from popping in and taking the staff to lunch, running staff training activities for us, buying the champagne to celebrate the successes, and advocating for our work whenever there was an opportunity. And you've personally been a tremendous support to myself. So thank you. And please, I'd love to hear a few words from you about what you think about the fact we finally did get to social. Thank you. Oh, Rodney, we can't quite hear you.
It's not my day. Is that better?
It's perfect. Thank you.
Right. Well, thank you, everybody. Sorry I was late on getting into the meeting today, but I am so pleased I was able to join because I would not have missed this for the world. I first met Mardi and Lois back in 2013 when I was new at the WBCSD. And I remembered that meeting because not only did I meet two incredible, passionate people about the work that they were doing, but it was music to my ears because suddenly out of this noise that was the reporting landscape were two people saying, well, our job is to make ourselves redundant. And that's what tonight's all about, because they not only sunsetted CDSB, they've set fire to the reporting world. And the journey that you start tomorrow will be no doubt as challenging, but as successful as the one that you've been on for the last 15 years. As somebody from the World Business Council for Sustainable Development and invited to be a board member, I was always a little bit critical of the focus on, well, it's climate, but sustainability is much broader than that. And having joined the sustainability world from a corporation, I knew that as somebody that worked in corporate reporting, in mainstream corporate reporting, we wanted a framework that would give us a holistic understanding of what it is we needed to do and how we were going to go about it. So I felt from day one that whilst the CDSB framework speaks the language of the accountant and of the mainstream corporate reporter, it didn't offer a fully rounded view of all of the issues that corporate reporters are wanting to report. And so I started being annoying. I did it very well, but I started being annoying from very early, saying, well, we need to do more. Where's the S in the ESG? And we got a little bit derailed with 2015 and the big focus on climate again and the, oh, let's jump back onto all of this, even though the framework had expanded into environmental by that stage. So I'm super delighted that the Secretariat and the board agreed to go down the journey of integrating the S into the CDSB framework. Because let's face it, after the last 2 years, the societal issues that the world has faced, the fact that we have been in a 2-year pandemic that has had unprecedented economic consequences, has shown that the S is as important as the other things that are out there. So the framework, I'm delighted, will be relaunched with the inclusion of the S. And I want to thank the board and the Secretariat for indulging my follies. But I also want to say a few personal words, and I've wanted to say things that perhaps I'm not capable of saying myself. So I have plagiarized someone else's words. So if you indulge me for another 2 minutes, I'd like to recite a poem, famous poem called "It Couldn't Be Done" by Edgar Guest, but I've modified it for today's audience. So here goes. Someone said that it couldn't be done, but Lois with a chuckle replied that maybe it couldn't, but she would be one who wouldn't say so till she tried. So she buckled right in with a trace of a grin on her face. If she worried, she hid it. She started to sing as she tackled the thing that couldn't be done, and she did it. Somebody scoffed, "Oh, you'll never do that. At least one never has done it." But Mardi took off her coat and took off her hat, and the first thing we known, she'd begun it. With a lift of her chin and a bit of a grin, without doubting or quit it, she started to sing as she tackled the thing that couldn't be done, and she did it. Now, the poem does have another verse, and this I'm going to keep as it was, because this is about the journey that you're starting tomorrow. There are thousands to tell you it cannot be done. There are thousands to prophesy failure. There are thousands to point out to you one by one the dangers that wait to assail you. But just buckle in with a bit of a grin and take off your coat and go do it. And just start to dance as you tackle the thing that cannot be done, and you'll do it. So I want to say thank you for all that you've done and for all that you're going to continue to do under the ISSB umbrella.
You are certainly all trying to leave me speechless today, aren't you, Rodney? That was ever so kind, and I'm so pleased personally that you did challenge us to go all the way and put social and environmental on the same footing in our work before we got to the very end. So now we're going to shift gear a little bit. So CDSB was provided with a home by CDP, who took on the responsibility of making sure the bills were paid and provided a fertile environment for the creative thinking and approaches needed to achieve CDSB's mission. CDP leaders had the foresight to see the importance of the work and the mission of CDSB, and ultimately responsible for the success we have achieved to date. Paul, as CDSB flies the nest, we would love to hear your thoughts on the CDSB journey and next steps. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mardi. I'm moved to say what a beautiful moment. As we heard, as we know, I know there are many friends here, it's a really important and exciting moment in the development of sustainability disclosure. As others have said, a critical step in the realization of CDSB's vision. And, NGOs are ultimately filling a gap in the market, really, and are supposed to have an end game. And it is a beautiful moment that the CDSB's end game is certainly so close to being achieved. There's still more work to do, but this sunsetting of CDSB is a pivotal and beautiful moment. And I didn't plan that word beautiful, but I think it's the right one. Just looking back very briefly, when we founded CDP in the year 2000, really to transform capital markets to address climate change through the tool and mechanism of disclosure, the market was very different. In 2007, as others have said, when we adopted CDSB on behalf of the CDSB board into CDP, we knew it was a responsibility to provide a home, to be a steward, but also to let the team run free with the brilliant vision. And, for many of us will remember this, but at that point in time, the landscape was so different. Sustainability, environmental disclosure was seen by many as a novel concept, not something necessarily that markets should even have to do. It was the exception, not the norm. I really forget my years, but ESG was not even a term or an acronym back in 2007. We were more in the SRI, socially responsible investment world at that point in time. So CDSB was a pioneer. It was clearly ahead of its time and formed to address this critical gap in the market. And, we see that gap now being filled with the creation of the ISSB. Many thanks have been given, and I'll give some more later, but I want to give great credit to you, Rick Samans, who in 2006 came to us. I remember the meeting with the other Rick from Swiss Re that you referenced earlier, and said something like, we like what CDP is doing on climate disclosure, but Paul, some of that information needs to be in the annual report and the mainstream filings. That's how this will get its due attention. And you said, look, for that, we're going to need a framework and a standard. And that vision that you had led to the creation of CDSB. So, Rick, your child, as you have said, really is graduating today. The creation of CDSB is a critically important step in the mainstreaming and institutionalization of the work of CDSB and CDP. And we need this to be institutionalized because it has to be done by everybody. And, you know, undoubtedly, this has to move rapidly to a path where sustainability disclosure is required by regulation everywhere in the world. We heard James from New Zealand that New Zealand was one of the first. So at CDP, we're really delighted to have, you know, stewarded, supported, held CDSB and the team for the last 15 years, and delighted now to enable the creation of the ISSB with many others. We will continue as CDP to engage and support the ISSB, including how we can drive adoption of the ISSB standards rapidly around the world. At CDP, we very much led on climate disclosure from the year 2000, and then water and forests, and now we are expanding to cover all of the environmental themes. So the wealth of knowledge and data that we create with that work, we will put at the service of the ISSB. There's been many thanks, but I have a few of my own. Rick, you did a wonderful list, but you know, Rick, to you for the vision, to the team, and especially Mardi, Lois, Mike, Ravi, many others, some we've heard from today. It's very clear to me, there's been some tough times with any project, any NGO. Have we got enough money? How are we going to push through this next barrier? And CDSB would not be where it is today without Mardi, without your drive and your tenacity. Absolutely, we will get this done. We will push through this. I mean, I just applaud you for always having a brilliant can-do attitude and delivering. Lois, I could say many things. We've worked together for many years, but the genius at solving technical challenges, and both of you, that brilliant mind for setting the strategy and delivering upon it. The board, it's important, and Rick, it was your vision, and we were very supportive that CDSB was a collaboration of a number of NGOs to all push in the same direction. There's so much learning from that in other initiatives. To the funders of both CDP and CDSB who've made this work possible. Without those resources, the work doesn't get done. So we have to thank them. And as others have said, the technical working group whose craft into the framework has really moved the market. Any friends in the corporate reporting dialogue, what then became the subsequent group of five, the GRI, SASB, IRC, CDSB and CDP to help evolve the work. At CDP, we'll really miss the team sitting under our roof in our offices. I can see the CDSB team from my desk when I'm in the office, but we look forward to continuing to work with them at the ISSB. So to conclude, so much has been achieved, and we should be very proud and absolutely celebrate that today, which is, of course, what we're doing. I also have to remind ourselves that, you know, we need sustainability disclosure both to have well-informed capital markets, which is obviously critically important and a key role for the ISSB, but also to enable us as the wider society to address the climate and ecological emergency. It is an emergency. We are in a crisis, and we have to move forward rapidly. And disclosure is one of the key tools that will help the world in that regard. So the ISSB is well placed to take sustainability disclosure to the next level of standardization and impact. and we will do everything in our power at CDP to help it to succeed for the future. So I'm very grateful to have been part of this initiative, so thankful to have the pleasure to work with so many of you. And of course, there is, as others have said, more work to do to help the ISSB to succeed, to rapidly get market adoption of those standards, and really to have policymakers require sustainability disclosure. It's been a pleasure, and we have no time to waste. Thank you.
We may not continue to be under the same roof for much longer, but we'll always be in the same sustainability family. Thank you all for all you've done in helping us achieve our success and your personal support. And we look forward to continuing to work with our good friends in CDP long into the future. Rick, can I invite you to say a few words to Paul and introduce our next speaker, please?
Okay. Well, also many thanks to you, Paul, for you and for what CDP has done. And Mardi, I gather that you would like me to introduce your new boss as, all the CDSB staff's new boss. Is that correct? I assume so. So with that, let me welcome somebody who I think we wish very much the best in the endeavors to come. Somebody who's a proven leader, who's an inspirational figure because he has walked the talk in this field. And I think that's one of the attributes, presumably, that the IFRS Foundation board saw in him. But he's also, somebody who's been running a corporation, dealing with the trade-offs and the dilemmas and the issues in the various stakeholders that are part of a company, and someone who is able to articulate the case here very, very well from experience. So it's congratulations to you, Emmanuel Faber. We wish you well, CDSB, in your new endeavor. We are, as my colleagues have said, we stand behind what you're seeking to achieve. I'm glad you're inheriting such a good team of people, and very much interested in hearing your comments. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Rick, for these very kind words. Well, my friends, my colleagues, for many of you, what can I really say? I mean, first of all, I assume you can imagine the sort of pressure that I now feel, having had a sort of an incredible, like 3/4 of an hour summary of basically the last 15 years. And these are years where the climate topics have really become a global conversation. And therefore, first of all, that's what I feel. I also feel a lot of emotion. I've been myself transitioning from businesses, from teams, when we integrated other companies, when we disposed of companies. And I'd like to echo what Rick was saying earlier in his comments. People and culture are a foundation. I would even go in my own word. I don't think there is anything else than people. Even money comes and goes with people. So, it's really to each of you that I can imagine the sort of emotion for you and the sort of emotion that I'm feeling right now. In many ways, what again your leaders were saying about graduating. You're graduating a new university that doesn't even exist. And that's a good thing of that. We will build it together. We will invent the future together. But that's on huge foundations. And therefore, what I feel also is gratitude. I mean, you can imagine. I wouldn't be with you if you hadn't done that. There would be no ISSB today. And that reminds me of, this Churchill sentence, I think, when during the Second World War, and we are really at war with climate here, he said, I think something like, and forget my bad English, but never had so many owed so much to so few. And you are those few. you, Rick, when you convened this Davos meeting in 2007, you, Paul, when you started in 2000. And I heard one of our colleagues saying, we were only 4 when we started. And literally, you have inspired a whole movement. And we're going to sit on the shoulders of giants. And we saw some of those giants in these videos. Mark Carney, you mentioned Jean-Claude Trichet, Nigel Topping was there, and Mary Shapiro, of course. And of course, you, Paul, and Rick, and Mardi, for those of you who I have got to know. But ultimately, I would say probably my biggest feeling today is excitement. The excitement of welcoming you as a team, my friends. It's not the end. It's the start of a new beginning, I would say. I hope and I trust that we will be true to the legacy of what CDSB has been about. And I think Rick mentioned a few items that he wanted to suggest in a way, but him and I have been already discussing that the ISSB will embark in terms of its ways of working. The due process, not being either political or advocating, just fulfilling our mission, which is about disclosures, transparency, reliability, and granularity to the level that it is material for investors' decisions. Not trying to say what should be good or bad, but just making sure that we focus on creating this transparency for externalities that are unseen now or not enough in the capital markets. So I hope that we will embark that. We will hopefully also embark this notion of global cooperation, being inclusive in the way we work, in the way we compose the 14 members, and obviously the teams. And you are the first employees, starting hopefully on the 1st of February of that new group that we will build together. So thank you for everything that you've been doing for the last 15 years. Thank you for all your leadership. As I think a few of your colleagues were saying, just running in high yields from meeting to meetings. I've been in some COPs and I know what that means also. Doing stuff that many people believe are not super exciting, but they are so fundamental. So fundamental. So a huge thank you for that. A moment of gratitude, of emotion, and I would say ultimately excitement. Excitement, and maybe allow me to borrow for my sort of final first words to all of you and to your wonderful family, whom I really, including your leaders, your boards, I really want to continue to interact because we have so much to continue to do together beyond the CDSB's integration and welcome into ISSB. Let me use some of the words that I heard in Rodney's words of poem, the last verse, which was, let's go and do it, buckle it and start to dance to do it. So let's do all of this together, my friends. A big welcome and congratulations for this incredible success. This is not the end, this is a new beginning. Thank you.
Vision, and we'll come back to the dancing analogy, but a few years ago, the CDSB team actually won the best dancers in sustainability. So you have the right lot that are coming on board, and we look forward to next steps. And the team is committed to working with the IFRS and your board with the same energy and ambition as we have for the last 15 years. It is humbling to reach our final event and thrilling to see what we can all achieve next. But in true CDSB style, it isn't over yet. We have 3 working days to go. There is a newly updated CDSB framework covering environmental and social matters that Rick and Rodney reflected on that we must publish. Tomorrow, we are releasing our last freely available CPD accredited online learning course in partnership with the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales, a 201 or level 2 accounting and climate module for accountants, as well as technical resources to support preparers on the annual report and templates for biodiversity reporting. So although it is sunsetting early next week, the work of CDSB remains relevant and valid until such time as the International Sustainability Disclosure Standards are published. And it is an excellent starting point for all of you that are still to embark on your reporting journey. There is absolutely no time to waste. That just leaves me to say a huge thanks to staff past and present for all of your efforts in advancing this agenda, working continuously in ambiguity as we strayed into areas where often no one had ventured before, for teaching me new things every single day, and most importantly, for making this journey fun. And finally, my heartfelt thanks to this community, including the CDSB board and technical working group, along with the specialist subgroups, for all of your support in helping us achieve the mission. We wouldn't be here today without you. I hope you'll continue with us and lend your support to the IFRS and ISSB endeavours. Thank you for your time to celebrate and reflect with us today, and I wish you all a lovely morning, afternoon, or good evening. Thank you and goodbye.